Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get into it with our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Savana Sharp coming to us all the way from Kansas, where, we can see she's wearing her Chiefs hat. It's already making me feel bad being a Vikings fan. The Vikings did win today and they got to 500, but, I like I told before, I wish just one time that they would just win one Super Bowl, and then I wouldn't even care the rest of my life. It would just be my shining moment. That's on my bucket list, but it looks like it's not going to happen anytime soon. But she's here to share her health and fitness journey with us, and talk all things health and fitness. She is a jack of a lot of trades. She's a competitor. She's a coach. She's a creator. She has a YouTube channel that I'll link down below. She has podcast links. She has so much content for everyone to go out there and check out. But most importantly, she's our current guest, Savannah. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, I got to ask first of all, because I love to torture myself. What is the weather like in Kansas today?
I think it's like 50 degrees, maybe like 46 degrees out. It's sunny and nice, and I went on a walk with my dogs today, so it's super nice.
Yeah, it's snowing right now here in Minnesota, and we had a really weird time because we got snow like 2 weeks before Halloween, so it's just been a funky year. But yeah, I mean, I'm actually enjoying it right now because I know that come January when it gets to -20, I won't be having too much fun. But before I get into that and depress everyone, why don't you give us your backstory on what really inspired and motivated you to get in shape and how that led to where you're at right now?
Yeah, so my fitness career started in 2017. It's a little bit of like a sadder story, but my brother did commit suicide, and so it was for me was like a way to use health and fitness in the gym as like a healing tool. So I found motivation from that, and I just want to be strong for others that couldn't be, and so I used that as like my motivating force. I needed to take my mental health seriously, and so I decided, right then and there, I was like, I need to set a goal for myself. So I started competing and I've never looked back since.
Wow, that's great. That's actually, you're not alone in that. We had another guest who had the basically like the same exact story, but it's just, yeah, it's like my dad said, it's one of the healthiest addictions you can have is working out and getting in shape. But yeah, it's a great coping mechanism as well. And I cannot tell you the countless number of stories that it's really helped out people. But when you were getting started working out, did you have any thought about competing at all, or was it just basically just to help clear your mind and get in shape, or was there sort of an end goal, or were you just going in there just to see what happened?
So I'd been toying with the thought of competing. I had always just been intrigued by it, and I knew a few girls that I worked with that had been competitors. But I was never the type of person who would go on stage. I was shy. I was not who I am now. But I really just needed to push myself as a goal and just say, I want to have something that I can achieve, that I'm going to work really hard at, and it was going to get me in the gym. I wasn't going to go out with friends. I wasn't going to turn to alcohol. I wasn't going to do any of those things. I was just going to work on me and my mental health and just get as pretty much in shape, the most in shape I could ever get. And so that's kind of how I did that.
So if anyone out there wants to know the difference between me and the competitors that I have on my show, I tried to do everything that she was talking about except added the alcohol and going out with friends. So that makes the difference between both of us. But yeah, that's why I don't have the dedication. That's why when everyone asks if I don't have the dedication, it's because yeah, these people have insane dedication, and I'm just one of those people where I love my food too much. But yeah, that's amazing. But when you were getting started working out, because this is a question that I ask every guest that I have on. If you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape. Whether it comes down to their diet, their nutrition, how many reps they do, what exercises they do. So many little things add up to that overall package that people end up seeing. And if you were to walk up to someone and say, hey, what'd you train for this body part? It looks amazing. What works best for them 99% of the time isn't going to work as good for you. What was that like for you, sort of figuring out what worked best for your body? Because it's so much trial and error, and it's really just a process that a lot of people our age don't get is going to take a lot of time. There's so many stories that I hear of people who go in and they're like, oh, it's going to, a couple of weeks. And it's like, no, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, so when I first started, I was an athlete growing up, so I had like a baseline. Like I know how to work out, I know how to do basic like movements and stuff like that. So I wasn't a super newbie, but as far as cardio, how many reps to do, things like that, I needed help. So I had to find a coach, and I knew that I didn't know how to be a competitor. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how to get my body in shape. So I reached out and found a coach. I thought that was the easiest, best way. I'm like, they went and got an education. I'm going to use their education. They're going to help me. And so I just got a coach, and they kind of told me what to do, showed me around, did a lot of in person training sessions when I first started. So I made sure I was doing really good form, that I wasn't going to mess myself up and lift too heavy or not lift heavy enough. I just needed someone that was going to be able to push me. So that's why I looked and started getting a coach immediately.
No, yeah, and that's I mean, I tell so many people go and get a coach because so many times I have friends that walk into the gym and they either go full Rambo and they work out like 3 hours a day for like a week and then they just quit because obviously yeah you're working yourself to exhaustion. But yeah, get a coach. I mean, there's nothing, especially if you want to take this seriously. Now, if you're just a novice beginner and you just want to lose some pounds, then you might not have to just go for a walk. But I mean, yeah, getting a coach is one of the things that I recommend more than anything else. But you mentioned my trigger word, cardio. I hate that more than anything else. I mean, it's my number one pet peeve in life. I mean, I have some people on this podcast that are runners, and I was like, okay, what sort of mental illness did you suffer from where you decided that running was something that you wanted to do actually as like a for fun? But yeah, I've been doing it a lot actually during this pandemic. But what is your relationship with cardio like?
So at first, I hated it. First, it was a struggle bus because I thought you're supposed to hate it because everyone hates it. And I personally don't do running. I never did track because I hated running. Used to not want to run. I never wanted to do conditioning. I played volleyball all growing up. But running, I was like, I can't do it. I can do anything else, but I do not want to run. So it took me a long time before I actually enjoy it. So now I actually kind of like look forward to it because, the runner's high when you're just doing your cardio, and I like doing the treadmill, step master, things like that. So now I really like it because I know it makes a difference having that added cardio. It does work.
Now I'll put an asterisk by me when it comes to either walking or bike rides. I'm absolutely fine with that. But yeah, any of those like people that do like the high intensity running, and it's like, no, I'm never like I told one of
Yeah.
my ex girlfriends who's a marathon runner, hey Ryan, you want to go out for a run? No, easiest no I've ever said in my entire life. I literally told her you would have to chase me with a knife basically to get me to run. That's the only time you're ever gonna see me run. But yeah, I mean cardio is so important, and I still to this day, I'll walk on the treadmill, half an hour some days and just I mean and it's also it clears your mind a lot and it's really helpful in that aspect. But I love to talk genetics on this podcast because so many people this day and age they're on all these social media platforms. Oh my god, I want his arms, I want her abs, I want their back. And it's you can only be the best version of yourself, and I don't know how many people have to like shake down to just tell them that before they finally start to believe it. But I mean, I hear those comparisons all the time, but on top of that, I always like to ask because whenever someone first gets started, they always have that one body part that really, really takes off, and they always have that one body part that just lags behind it. They have to train to oblivion. Everyone on this podcast knows that my back was the one that took off for me, and being 6'3", my legs and my lower body were just good luck getting any growth there. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
It was everything, but specifically for bikini, it was shoulders and glutes. Like the physique that I had before I started was just very like up and down. So we had to work on like creating the illusion of like the hourglass perfect frame. So the smaller the waist, we needed to be wider up top. So I put a lot of work into my upper body, and I also had to put some size onto my hamstrings and glutes and just build pretty much from the ground up because I was kind of like the skinny fat. I wasn't out of shape, but I wasn't necessarily fit and toned, and I just had never understood like how to actually engage muscles and like how to build muscles. I was an athlete like through high school and stuff, so I had that base, but I never actually trained for specific muscle groups until I started doing bodybuilding.
Yeah. Well, and now I got to ask because shoulders is the number one thing that we hear from women. That's like the hardest thing for them to grow. And you said that yours really took off. How were you able to do that? Because I can guarantee there's going to be at least a couple hundred women listening to this podcast being like, okay, how did she grow her shoulders like that? I'm going to write down notes.
Train heavy. So shoulders actually are my favorite exercise now because I'm really strong on it, but it's dumbbell shoulder presses all the way. Dumbbell shoulder presses, just like sitting on like a bench and just lift as heavy and go as slow as you can. Really like feel and engage it, and then a lot of lateral raises. I've done so many lateral raises. Every single time I'm training upper body, we're doing lateral raises or we're doing shoulders. We're just trying to pump the shoulders, warm up sets, and like just you have to keep lifting. And sometimes you're going to fail, but you have to lift heavy to actually get them built. I just didn't used to train heavy. I'd be like 10 pounds, and now it's a lot heavier.
No, and that's something I agree with totally. And also, if you really want to improve a body part, everyone, you got to train them more than once a week because the general person, they'll train it once a week and they'll be like, oh, I'm not seeing that much results. And then meanwhile, you have these bodybuilders, the people who they're looking up to that train them, sometimes 2 to 3 times a week, and it's, all that too. But yeah, for shoulders, I'm glad that you mentioned that because that's why I love asking that question because we get such a wide variety of answers. Where I mean, shoulders is definitely one that we hear of struggles a lot. But yeah, that's amazing. And when you were getting started, was there any sort of thought process as to what division you wanted to compete in? Were you thinking about, bikini or figure, or did you always want to do bikini?
Oh, bikini all the way. I've watched like the Victoria's Secret fashion shows, and like, as like a little kid, you always want to be like, I don't know, like on the cover of Sports Illustrated. So I saw the girls on like Sports Illustrated and like Victoria's Secret, and it kind of like paired the two of the like athletic, but still has that like sex appeal, and it just was like a very feminine fit look that I thought was achievable, and so it was a look that I wanted to take my physique. I never wanted to do figure. I always knew it was bikini.
Well, I got to tell you, so this is my health and fitness podcast I do, but on my actors and athletes podcast that I have on, I interviewed Miranda Kerr, and that was one of the highlights of my life.
Oh my gosh,
Oh my
yes.
god. That accent, are you kidding me? And she called me darling and I was like, "Okay, come on. Like this is not even fair." So, yeah, but I totally yeah, that those Victoria's Secret. Yeah, that was definitely one of the highlights here. But one thing with bikini that really differentiates itself from all the other divisions is that you have to have your own like sass, your own flair, your own personality. Was that something that took a while for you to channel or have you always been that sort of personality where that just came natural to you?
Oh my god, no. So I have 2 left feet, so I can't dance. I have no rhythm. So posing is kind of like dancing. It's kind of like a presentation. So you have to like put your own flair onto it and add little hand motions and, shoulder pops and like cute little things like that. And I was just, look like a deer walking in high heels. So it's definitely I've had to practice a lot for it to look and flow natural so I can hit certain poses to make my muscles look a certain way and also to still look elegant and present my figure to the judges.
Out of your poses that you do, what was the one that came easiest for you and what was the one that was the most difficult for you?
Front pose is easy because, it's not awkward. And when you first start, like I was extremely uncomfortable in the back pose because you're showing your butt to a bunch of people in a small thong, pretty much. And you're sticking it out. And so it's a little uncomfortable when you first start. But then when you realize, it's not it's not something you're showing your muscles. You're showing muscle definition. And so instead of like, oh, I'm sticking my butt in the air, it's no, I'm showing my glutes and my hamstrings and I worked really hard so you can see these different details. So it took me a long time in that arch and the lower back to really train myself to be able to like throw your back out when you're posing. So it's been a lot.
Which, I mean, if I ever competed, the back would be my favorite, and everyone knows this because that's the one pose where you don't have to smile. You can put your smile down a little bit. Most people don't understand that for a lot of these competitions, your jaw muscles is the most sore thing after because you just got to be
Yes.
smiling that whole time. But yeah, I mean, especially with those high heels too. I mean, I always say, don't these competitors go through enough as it is? And then you got to make them wear high heels when they're walking on stage. Yeah, it's just, it is really absolutely ridiculous. But we come now to the nutrition aspect because that is something that, I mean, it gets talked about a little bit, but not as much as it should because, I mean, so many times people, especially when we were talking about people getting started working out, they go into the gym and they don't do anything with their nutrition, and then they don't see the results that they wanna see, and then they blame it on either their trainer or they blame it on, they might not be working hard enough. When the fact is, I mean, if you're going and having McDonald's, after a workout, it's like, yeah, that might not be the best thing for you, but what were some of the bigger nutritional changes that you made when you really started to take this lifestyle seriously?
So when I first started, I wasn't drinking enough water and I wasn't getting enough protein, which is very common for most people if they don't have enough protein. So I didn't even know what a protein powder was. I didn't know that you could get protein from a powder and it would actually taste good. So I immediately, like when I first started, we just started gallon a day, no excuses, gallon a day. And then at least 2 scoops, I think, of 2 scoops of protein powder. And just that small change, I noticed like huge results very quickly.
No, and water, that's one thing for me that I have never had a problem with because I mean, I'll go through even doing my walking sessions, I'll drink a gallon. That's the only problem that I have with, when they had you wear masks in the gyms. Well, our gyms have got shut down again was that, I basically just wanted to just put a hole inside my mask where I'd have a tube attached to like a water jug so I could just constantly cuz I go through so much water. I mean, I probably cost the city of Bloomington where I live, probably thousands of dollars over the years with all the water that I use for my faucets. But yeah, that protein too. I mean, that's one thing that even I struggled with too. And it's one thing that a lot of, especially a lot of women I hear on too, they struggle with that a lot too. But yeah, that water is just so important. The only drawback of that is, I mean, you're never gonna get like a perfect, 8 hours of sleep without having to wake up and go to the bathroom. That's one thing that I think everyone on this show has struggled with as well. But when it comes to that nutrition, I mean, if you were to talk to someone and someone were to ask you, what you would recommend just overall, because the one problem with being a trainer and, also being a coach like you are, is that everyone's different. I mean, you're never going to find one thing where it's like, oh, just eat some more lettuce. If that, and that's going to help out everyone. It's not going to help out everyone. But what would you say are some general things that you've come across that really would help out an individual when it comes to their nutrition?
It's portion control, really. Like, you don't have to make it harder than it really is, like, especially if you're doing flexible dieting. So you can find ways to still have pizza, have tacos, have cupcakes, have whatever that you actually love to eat. You just have to do it in moderation. So as long as you know you have like a healthy outlook, you understand basic calories and just being aware of what you're consuming. Some people don't understand that things that they think are healthy, like certain smoothies or things that they have, like salad, like at a restaurant. Some people think, well, I'm eating salads and I'm eating healthy. Well, actually, you're eating a 1,500 calorie salad 3 times a day. So you're actually in a calorie surplus, whether you might think it's healthy, and yes, it is, good high volume foods, but to actually have results, you do have to restrict your portions and just really be mindful of the calories that you're consuming.
I mean, calories in, calories out. That's a saying that I couldn't, I mean, it's honestly just the one thing that you really got to work out for is the calories because, yeah, I mean, I love that you said that, people take it so seriously or people just go way too hard on it when it's just really just
Yeah.
control what you eat. I mean, or control your calories, I should say, because yeah, I have friends that are in, the best shape of their lives and they're able to have a cake every once in a while or they're able to go to get some fast food maybe like once every 2 weeks or something like that. It's just they just keep it in control. But yeah, I mean, nutrition is a whole vast thing that I'm just gonna have to do a whole podcast in and of itself because I mean, with everyone's issues that they have, whether it's like gut health or all these other issues, I mean, it's so individualized where I cannot on this podcast give a general program for everyone to follow because I'll get 10 people commenting down below, oh, that doesn't work for me and stuff like. So I won't even jump into that. So we'll move on to, I mean, the number one myth that I love to bust in this podcast, and we discussed it briefly before we started recording, is that it's gotten better the last 5 years due to Instagram and I think other influences, but there are still so many women that I hear all the time. As soon as they walk in the gym, they take one look at the weights. They just run off to the treadmill basically because they have that myth that if I touch it, I'm gonna hulk out and look like a man or anything like that. And then they just think, oh, as long as I run 20 miles a day on this treadmill, I'm gonna do all that. But well, first of all, if you do run 20 miles a day, you will lose weight. That's just it's gonna happen. But did you ever have that fear when you were getting started about touching the weights, or was that something that you knew was a myth? And how do you like to respond to that? Because I bet still to this day you hear that.
Yeah. So I think that there is a myth that I don't know where it got that you're immediately, if you lift weights, you are going to get big and you're going to become a man and you're going to look like a man and you're not going to look feminine anymore. Like, a lot of girls are scared. Like, they say, I don't want my legs to get too big or whatever it is. And they have no idea like how hard it is to actually build muscle. And I've been trying to, and let me tell you, I lift as heavy as I physically possibly can, and I am not like a man. I don't look big, and you have to work hard. You don't just muscles don't just like magically appear on accident overnight. You have to try to get big. It's like at a certain point, they're eating so much, like we eat so much to get this way that we are. So you're going to have to, not just do cardio, you're going to actually have to train and create shapes with your muscles. It's going to give you different shapes. The tone look that you see, it's because it's less fat and it's more muscle density. So that's going to give you like that nice curve that everyone's looking for.
I hate it whenever I have women on this podcast that mention the word tone. That should just be erased from the dictionary. It's really
Yeah.
putting on muscle. There's like, oh, I just want to get toned, and it's like What do you mean by that? Oh, I just want to lose some fat here and I want to, get it's like that's muscle right there that you're gaining. But yeah, I mean, fortunately, I should say it has gotten better, but it's still a struggle that a lot of women deal with. And, I always like to tell the story of when I was in college and I had a friend who she had a very heavy purse. I don't know if she had like a dead sorority sister in there or something like that, but it was like, a good, 20 pounds or whatever. And I told her, I was like, look, the amount of weight that you carry in that purse that you log around all the time, you should be like a bodybuilder if your theory were to be true. And then that sort of made her realize that hey, it's not the case. So yeah, and just get started. I mean, because what's the worst thing if you lift a weight? The worst case scenario is that you would gain 50 pounds and look like a man. In your opinion, you would be a national treasure, first of all. So that's
Yes.
I mean, I don't get that, I don't understand that, but for anyone out there, that is not the case. And if it is the case, give me a call because I want to train with you. I'll spend my entire life savings just to train with you once. I think everyone on this podcast would do that because I mean
Oh
you are
my
just
gosh, yes.
a genetic anomaly. But going off that too, I mean, there's so many things that I think impact women so much more positively than men when it comes to the gym, especially when it comes to that confidence boost that it gives you. I mean, we've heard hundreds of stories on this podcast of women who have, they've either made life-changing decisions, it's helped them become more assertive, or it's just helped them better their overall everyday life. And I think that that's the one thing that you can take from the gym and use to impact your life. How have you taken that confidence boost that working out's given you and use it to impact your life?
Honestly, the confidence is helped me in everything that I do. It's more so goal setting and just being confident in myself that I can achieve anything that I put my mind to. It's not as much like as you would think, like the confidence in your appearance. That's really just like a small bit of it. I'm just confident that I can set a goal for myself and I can achieve it. And so that goes for, work, it goes for anything outside of the gym. You can apply those same principles to, I want to lift this heavy weight and eventually you do it. I want to hit this goal and eventually you do it. So it just gives me confidence in myself that like I can achieve anything that I set my mind to.
Yeah, and that's great. And going off like the physical aspects, I mean, I know I've been blessed with an average face at best. So I always tell my friends, no matter how ripped I become, I still have to deal with this. So it keeps me humble. So that's one thing that I really enjoy out of this too is that like hey, because I mean we've heard some stories where people they just associate everything with their well being when it comes to how they look, and that is not a healthy way to go. I mean I've had some of the most in shape people on the planet on this podcast, and they tell me getting in shape didn't help me with my mental effects because I didn't work on them mentally, and this is so much more of a mental journey than a physical journey. I cannot tell you how many times people have told me that story. And it's the same thing with me too, where the mental effects are about 10 times as bad or 10 times more powerful as the physical, but people only realize the physical effects. What's this mental journey been like for you? Because I mean, everyone's going to see your physical change and they're going to be like, oh my God, Savannah, you look great. You look amazing. But no one's going to really be like, hey, how's this all been mentally for you?
Yeah. So mentally, like I feel like I'm very strong. I feel like I can put myself through anything and like any situation I can overcome. Especially like I work in the corporate world, so when things get stressful, I don't. It doesn't really phase me anymore because I always know there's a solution or workaround, or how do we figure it out? So it's really helped me just be level headed and just that's kind of what I think it will help me with.
Yeah, I used to work in the corporate world as well at UPS, and I have some horror stories there that I'm waiting to do for another podcast. And I mean, good for you being in that corporate world because I lasted about 2 years there, and I was like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. This is bad. But yeah, it's a whole different lifestyle. But in your journey, when did you decide that you wanted to become a coach and help out others? How long into your journey?
It's honestly been this year. So I was a volleyball assistant coach. So I love training people. And then I always would, in any jobs that I've had, I've always liked to train the newbies, train the new people that are coming in. So I love training and like showing people how to do something after I've learned it. So someone DM'd me on Instagram and was like, "Hey, are you a coach? I've been following you. I really like what you're doing. Will you coach me?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." And so I'm like, "Okay, I guess I know what I'm doing." So I started coaching her and just kind of like I'm still building my business right now, but I'm slowly kind of starting the coaching.
Yeah. And that's amazing. And that really goes to show that, one person can make a difference. I honestly started this podcast because I was at a party and one friend goes, dude, you talk a lot. You should do a podcast. And I was like, hey, it's a good idea. So yeah,
It
but
is.
yeah, I mean, it's one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. And, but then again, I haven't made that many good decisions if I were to look back on my life. So, it's a low bar really that I have to settle for. So, but, it's a good thing. But I mean, on your journey as well, So many people don't talk about the obstacles that they face a lot on social media because I mean, if someone were to follow you, I mean, you're a lot more on. I've looked at some of your posts, you're a lot more raw and honest than a lot of people, which I appreciate. But so many people don't discuss, the bad things of their life, and that's everything with social media. But how do you deal with those days where you don't want to get up and work out? Because I mean, if anyone tells me, and I've had two guests tell me that that's never happened to them, and I just nod my head and agree with them, but deep down in my line, I was like, okay, you're BSing me, and I know that for a fact. But how do you personally deal with those days when you're just not feeling right and everyone has them, but how mentally are you able to push through those?
So for me, like I never really missed a gym session, and I really haven't unless something was crazy. It's really rare for me. I'll just push through it. Like mentally, sometimes it means even if you have to lie to yourself, like you don't want to go to the gym, just driving to the gym and sitting in your car and be like, I'm not going in. Nope, I'm not going in. And maybe that's slamming a pre workout on a day where you just really need it and just letting the pre workout do half the battle for you. Sometimes it's listening to a podcast. There's a lot of motivating podcasts that help me personally. Like, they'll talk to you about these goals. I like the ones that get you fired up. Sometimes I just look back at my old journey, writing things down, journaling every single day, starting your day. Like, what's your goal for today? Like, what do you want to achieve today? And what do you want to achieve tomorrow? And just like making today better than it was yesterday. And so, or if today's a crappy day, then trying to make tomorrow better. So just, if you're really not feeling it, say, okay, I'm going to take today as a rest day, but I have to push myself harder tomorrow because, your goal is still going to be there tomorrow, regardless if you decide to skip the gym or not. So you have to do those little things because it's not going to be some magical one day you're just going to achieve your goals. It's a combination of like small little decisions that you made on a daily basis to help you get to that larger goal. So for me, it just, I don't know, like I don't have a lot of hard days. Some days I do, but I just have to find something that works for me. And so I've found like a routine is the best thing. Like once you give in once, it's a lot easier to give in twice. So just try to stay consistent, stay on that road, go to do your workout, do your cardio, follow your plan, and just trust the process.
Now, how do you also deal with that thought process when it comes to rest days? Because I have had the struggles myself where when you're not doing anything, you feel like you're a failure. You're like, oh my God, I should be doing something. Like, what am I doing? How have you been able to convince your body that, it needs the rest, even if your body is telling you, like, I need this rest, but mentally you're just like, no, I can't just be static and doing nothing. How are you able to, remain sane during rest days?
Rest days a little bit hard, so I try to make them like lightly active rest days. So I'm still trying to stay active. I don't want to just sit on the couch every day. But honestly, like your body is gonna thank you and the results are in the data. So a lot of times you will start to see if I am going 7 days a week and then I take a rest day, I can hit a PR the next day. Or it just helps your recovery because your muscles, you're tearing them apart in the gym. So that rest day is going to really help on making you better in the gym on the next session that you go to. So you have to incorporate them because you have to heal. You have to let your body rest. Otherwise, you're going to start to plateau or you're just not going to be able to push as hard. So I love rest days. Honestly, they're really fun. I try to use them as doing something else healthy. So I'll do like my meal prep on my rest days. So I'm still like doing something that's still like working towards my goals.
Yeah. No, and that's I mean, got to keep yourself busy too, because I've had days too where I'm just sitting around and then it really, really becomes hard. But one thing when it comes to rest, that is, I mean, the most important thing, maybe in your overall journey, well, in health and fitness, at least it's the most important thing, but it's never talked about, is sleep. I mean, it is. Oh my god, don't make me go on like a 10-hour tangent because I could on sleep, but it's the most important thing when it comes to recovery. It's probably the most important thing overall in your life. I mean, for anyone that doesn't agree with me on that, pull an all-nighter and then go and work out and tell me how that went. And I tried that twice in college and both times I made it halfway through and then I was like, okay, this is BS. I'm just gonna go back and try to fall asleep. But how do you try to get the proper amount of sleep and what's the average range that you try to get? Because so many people it varies. I mean, we've had people who can function greatly on 5 to 6 hours, and other people where it's like, I need my 8 hours. So, what does that look like for you, and how are you able to get that proper amount of hours that really, because when you're this healthy and in this lifestyle, I mean, sleep is 10 times more important than it is if you're just an average Joe.
Yeah, so part of my actual like training program from my coach is to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. I've worked night shift before, I think a year ago, and so I was prepping through night shift, and I would get maybe 3 to 4 hours of sleep. So now I really prioritize my sleep and get at least 8 to 9 hours. I go to bed at like 9 p.m., but I wake up at like 5 a.m. every morning. So I at least try to force myself to get to sleep really early because I rise really early. So just kind of like shutting your electronics down, either like winding down with like an episode of Netflix, just trying to, settle down and make yourself go to sleep at a certain time.
Well, until this pandemic, I was a night shift worker as well. So when you're getting up at 5 o'clock, that was when I was about going to bed. But when you were
Yeah.
doing that during your prep, how are you able to function? Because I mean, so many people don't understand, and I have to explain to them. It's very hard to go to sleep when the sun is coming up, as opposed to
Yeah.
going to sleep when it's down. How did you deal with that on 3 to 4 hours? Were you just addicted to caffeine, basically?
Yeah. So during that time, I was kind of like a walking zombie. So I would work 12 and 13 hour. I would do 12 and 13 hour days every day, and then I'd train for like an hour, 2 hours. So sleeping, I had to medicate with like Benadryl or like melatonin. How to do the whole blackout curtains, how to do the fan, how to do it, and it wasn't the same. And then on my days I wasn't doing the night shift, I would just sleep. I would sleep until I would out an alarm and just whenever I woke up and just try to get as much sleep on days I wasn't on the night shift and kind of like flip my sleep schedule. It was really tough, but it kind of made me appreciate sleep a little bit more, and so I'm very grateful. And it taught me that I can get up whenever. Early mornings don't really bother me anymore because of night shift.
Well, I gotta ask now, being a football fan myself, how are you dealing with all these Chiefs late night games then if you're going to bed at 9 o'clock?
So I sometimes I don't watch. I'll be honest. I wake up too early for
Yeah.
that.
No, I get that too. I mean, I'm the complete opposite where I mean, if there was ever like an 8 a.m. game when the Vikings played in London, it's like there's no way in hell that I'm getting up for that. I'll wake up at halftime, but yeah, I mean, it's just but yeah, sleep is another thing that I mean, if I could just preach to people, it's just you got to get your proper amount of sleep because as you can tell by the bags underneath my eyes, I have not been getting my proper amount of sleep these last couple of nights, but that's me on the weekends. I don't sleep that much cuz I'm up editing these things all night for all of you lovingly people that watch this. But yeah. So also going into this journey, one myth and stereotype that I also love to bust as well is so many people don't understand that that look that you present on stage is not a sustainable look. You're not going to
No.
be able to look that way 365 days out of the year. And so many people don't get that because I like to compare it to shows like Biggest Loser, where people go on there and they may lose like 100 pounds and then they keep that weight off. And then people just look at that and they're like, oh, these competitors that work just as hard, probably even more harder than those guys, they should be able to look that stage look 24/7. They don't realize the manipulations that you've done either with your water, or just with your food, or all the other stuff that takes into maintaining that and to getting that look. But what has that been like for you, sort of, as you realize that, like, hey, this look that I presented on stage that might be the best that I look in a long time, I'm not going to be able to maintain it. Has that gotten easier for you to accept that as your career in bodybuilding has gone on?
Yeah, 100%. It's a little bit hard because other people don't understand that. So they just kind of think that you're either getting fat or they're like, oh, well, you're editing your pictures or something because they see your stage pics and then they immediately think that's what you walk around with year round. But it's not the case. So it's an extremely low body fat. And so to maintain that, it's extremely unhealthy for females as well. It's not sustainable. It's not healthy at all at a certain point. Bodybuilding, no one ever said bodybuilding was healthy. It gets to an extreme level of leanness where you have to, it's extreme, guys. It's not just, flexible, you get to eat whatever you want. Like, we are trying to do something that the body doesn't want to do. And so sometimes it becomes unhealthy. So we are trying to get this look for stage for a competition. And that's all it is. It is one day where we try to bring in everything. We want to make our muscles look as full. We want to be as shredded as possible, especially for a female. That's extremely hard to do. Our bodies don't want to be lean and shredded and have muscle. They want to have body fat. So, like, it's you have to kind of get comfortable being uncomfortable, especially in bodybuilding. It's uncomfortable to be like super lean. It's uncomfortable to be super out of shape in off season, and just find like a healthy balance where you're okay regardless of whatever the scale says. There's a lot of different things that you can do. Just I will wear sweatshirts, or I'll just really try to just be okay with my results in the gym. Like, if my energy is good, I'm happy. Whether maybe the scale's up, but I pushed really hard. There's just different things. It's just that look. It is hard to do, and so you can't attach yourself to it. So take your pictures and then that's it. The rest of the year, you have to have something that's maintainable.
Well, and it's like only 5 to 10% of the population would ever be able to get that lean anyway. I mean, it takes you have to be genetically blessed to do that. Like if some average Joe decides to bodybuild and he takes like 2 or 3 years to do it, he's not going to get down to that leanness as someone who might, have that little head start, which is another thing. But yeah, I hate those stories that I hear of, some people who their friends see when they're off season, they're like, "Oh, did you quit bodybuilding? You finally like get rid of
Yeah.
that?" And it's like, no, I'm just, putting on some weight." So yeah, that's another thing. That's why I ask that on every podcast, because I really think that people need to realize that, like, hey, they're not going to look like that, 24/7. And it's just, and unfortunately, like I've heard some people do try that, and I've had some guests that have tried that, and it usually ends your career early, and you have a lot more health problems. So it's not healthy at all to do that. And I love that you said bodybuilding isn't a healthy sport. No one said it was, because yeah, it really isn't when you look deep down on it. I mean, those guests, I always said if you were to do like a strength competition on the stage, you would be shocked at how weak some of these competitors are, because their body is not because they're weak, but just because their body is weak at that moment
Yeah.
of doing things. So it's, yeah, it's a whole different world. But now I want to talk about the big elephant in the room, the coronavirus, because I mean, it's something that's impacted our lives in more ways than we can imagine, especially our generation. Where I mean, no, actually, you're not a millennial, because I was like one of the last years. You're whatever. She's 24. I'm 26. She makes me feel old. Okay, we'll get that out of the way right now. But anyway, so people, I'll just say our age, because yeah, we are similar in age. But how have you been dealing with this pandemic, especially because we're both in, the healthy and fit lifestyle. I mean, I just don't compete, but we both kind of, didn't have access to gyms. I mean, I had to move back in with my parents, and they have a nice setup downstairs. But how have you been dealing with this pandemic, especially in the early months when access to gyms was limited?
Yeah, so it didn't really sink in how serious it was until they started canceling things, and then everything got canceled and shut down. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're not gonna close the gyms. I remember I was training. It was the last day I was in the gym. I was like, they're not gonna close the gym down. The next day, they're like, unfortunately, the gym has been closed. Yeah, so that was really hard. I had to adapt. I had never done home workouts before until COVID happened, and it was forced me. So it was a make or break situation. I had to decide, how important are my goals? Because I wasn't just going to give up. I was prepping during COVID, and I just said, I have a 5 pound dumbbell, I got 8 pound, I got some bands, I have outside, and I have my body. So I'm going to make it work. You don't have to have a gym to get in shape. A lot of people think that's what you need, but you can also get in shape just with yourself. My parents did have a nice gym, so I was able to use their home gym. So they had some nice dumbbells, like 5 pounds to like 35 pounds. So I was able to get a very good lift in, almost the exact same. I just wasn't able to have as much volume as far as weight goes, but it just changed my workouts from lower rep, higher weight to higher rep, lower weight. And it just changed my training style. I had to adapt. I changed a lot of different things. I was able to isolate and focus on my core. So I'm kind of grateful that COVID happened, because my core got really strong, because there's nothing else to do besides do some ab workouts and a lot of cardio, just outside running, hit whatever I can do, find like jumping jacks. I had to just get really creative. And then there was a secret underground bodybuilding gym that was low key still open for certain people that I may or may not have attended. So
I love how gyms sort of became like speakeasies now, because like it was literally just
yeah.
on a thing where it's like you just need to know where, yeah, and the people that need it really got it, which is something that I appreciate. But yeah, I mean, it was so funny when the governor announced like 3 weeks ago that the gyms were going to be shut down until December 18th. 5 minutes after that, I got 3 text messages. Do you have any extra weights? I know you work out a lot. Do you have any extra weights? And I gave some weights, because I had we had like a couple extra 20s and stuff. But yeah, it's just a surreal time. But how did you deal with, the mental side effects of the pandemic, also with working out at home? Because for so many people, going to the gym, that is their escape. Like as soon as they get into that gym, they're like, okay, I'm out of, my world basically, or I'm into my new, my comfort zone. And it's hard to adjust that zone to a place that you weren't normally used to. So what was that like?
It was kind of hard. So I talked to my coach, and he was like, our goal for this period of time is to maintain and not go backwards. He's like, I don't want you to sit inside and get fat and eat like crap for 4 or 5 months. We don't know how long it's going to happen. And I think the big thing was, because we didn't know how long the shutdowns were going to last, we were always trying to stay ready. So that way, the second the gym's open, we can just like jump and really push hard. Uh, so like our goals was just okay, we got more time to focus on posing. We have more time to focus on conditioning. So we're going to have more cardio. It's going to be more outdoor style. We're going to just try to work on like band work and things that we can control. And that was really it. Just don't go overboard. It wasn't time to like, people were like drinking and like hoarding food, and people put on a bunch of weight during this time. I was still dieting, so I still dieted through the entire this entire year, but through the entire time, because I knew that I wanted to, whenever shows were gonna, because a bunch of the bodybuilding shows got canceled. Whenever they were going to be ready, I wanted to be ready and just to jump into a show. So I didn't give up during that time.
Yeah. And I'll admit, I went a little overboard. I put on about 10 pounds, but I've been losing that since. But, hey, it happens. But yeah, it's just, yeah, just the time that we live in. It was just so shocking. And with all these shows getting canceled, how were you able to, still be on a diet? Because we've had competitors on here that, I mean, they were prepping then for like 7 or 8 months because every single time they thought that they were getting close, oh, it's going to be delayed a month. And unfortunately, some of them did lose some muscle just because, when you're in prep for that long, you're not going to be able to maintain everything. But how did you deal with all that? Just the uncertainty of not knowing when these competitions were going to be.
So I had originally planned to, I started in December of 2019 and was going to prep until July. My show got canceled in April. So I think I was 8 weeks out, maybe 12 weeks out, something like that. I don't know. It got pushed to December, and that was too long. So there was another show in September. So I ended up doing a 10-month prep. Um, and I'm still actually prepping. So I've actually been prepping this whole year. So I went and competed in September, and then I stepped off stage and was like, you know what? I'm not done yet. I still want to keep going. So I'm prepping now, and I'm going to be competing next week.
Jesus. I mean,
Yeah.
that's dedication and that's willpower for you. And that's just good God. 10, I mean, we've had some people that have tried for like 6 months and I'm like, God bless you. But 10 months, that is just absolutely insane and more power to you because I could never do that in a million years. But being that you are a coach, this is a question that I find so fascinating, especially in these times, is that in this day and age with the pandemic, if people say that they don't have the time to work out, I want to know what's going on with their life because I can guarantee you, being a coach, that's the number one excuse that you hear is, "Oh my God, I don't have the time." I'm just so busy. Which, first of all, everyone has the same 24 hours in the day, unless you're like Dwayne the Rock Johnson. I am making a conspiracy theory here that he made a deal with the devil to get like 27 or 28 hours because how he's able to do everything in a day, I don't understand it. But other than Dwayne the Rock Johnson, everyone has the same 24 hours in the day. But what advice would you give for someone who's just looking to get started? Because I mean, with some, you don't know where they're from, the gyms could be shut down, just anyone in general. What are some, ways that you think that someone would be able to just get started during this day and age? Because I I always tell people just taking that first step, it makes everything so much easier.
Yeah. So dieting and losing weight is not that complicated. You have to just move more and eat a little bit less, and you can do those together. And so, however you choose to do that is up to you. Whatever's convenient. There's so many things that people are getting on lives every day and doing free workouts on Instagram. You just have to just follow some people. You can get free workouts, free really good workouts. There's apps. There's fitness programs. Just search free fitness programs. There's just everything out there. Ask for help, post on Facebook, hey, I need a coach. If you need a coach, just start looking up YouTube videos. There's so many YouTube videos. You could get yourself fit through YouTube. There's just like unlimited resources that are free for you. Local gyms, bands, training. There's the DVD box sets you can just do. You could play like Just Dance on your gaming device or whatever. Like you can go take a yoga class, you can go bike riding. There's so many ways to move your body. You just have to do whatever you feel best doing. You don't have to lift weights and you don't have to be on a treadmill. I don't encourage you to anyway. Like you want to do something that you actually enjoy. Like if you like tennis, do tennis, but don't force yourself to exercise because you think that's how it's going to work. Just, make a few healthy decisions, start really small, and don't do something drastic. You have to make it sustainable. So don't try to drastically change your diet. Just make a few healthy decisions here and there. And that's just kind of like how it progresses from there. So just start small.
I love that you said that because a lot of my friends, especially, they have that. No, another myth that they have to lift weights if they want to get in shape. That's the only way that I can get in shape. And it's like, no, I have friends that do yoga. I have friends that do, cycling. I have friends that even swimming, got them in shape. And it's just there's so many ways to find out. And it's I honestly wanted to rename this podcast Trial and Error because it's called DD on the spot. Because in college, I had one night every week that I would go out drinking, and then the next night I would be the designated driver on the spot. So that's how this whole thing got started. But anyway, so I want to change this podcast name to Trial and Error because that's honestly just this entire lifestyle of what you're going to really go through. But before I do my last couple of questions, this is the time where you plug everything that you are, so we can get that out of the way, so that at the end people don't just like click off as soon as it happens. So where can people find you at? I mean, I'll leave a link to your YouTube. I'll leave a link to your Instagram. But what are other ways that people could get in contact with you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram. It's at Savannah Sharp Fitness. My YouTube channel as well is Savannah Sharp Fitness. And then I also do have a podcast. So I host my own podcast. It's called Cupcakes and Protein Shakes. So it is, it's fun. I like sweets and I like protein shakes. So I talk about anything that I want to that relates to bodybuilding, health, fitness, mindset, motivation, and more. That is going to be on like Spotify, Apple, iTunes, and I do new episodes every single Wednesday. So stay tuned for that. I'm also a fitness and health coach. So if you ever want help getting started or you just want some questions answered, you can also shoot me an email to Sharp Savannah, that is SHARP, and then SABANA at gmail.com.
There you have it, everyone. I mean, go and give her a follow on all those links down below. And, I highly recommend it. And just having a podcast that has that title, you got me drooling just a little bit, just thinking about that. So, hey, God, I really want a cupcake right now, but I can't have one. But, hey,
Yeah.
why did you do that to yourself? Because you've been on prep for like 10 months. Why did you just like torturing yourself by having your podcast titled that? So you're just like, I'm doing another episode, yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah.
The cravings are real, but
Oh my
oh
God,
well.
yeah. Especially during this time. But now the last couple of questions before we wrap things up. So again, I say this not knowing what the future is going to hold because the question that I ask everyone is, if we were to talk to you a year from today, where would you like to be at in, your health and fitness or just your overall life? Again, if last year I would have asked you that same question and you would have predicted a global pandemic and everything else, I would have called you a liar and bet my entire, life savings against it. So it goes to show that I don't know what the future is going to look like. So, if we talk next year and you see like a fire burning behind me and you hear gunshots going off, who knows what the future is going to be like a year from now. But in an ideal world, a year from today, where would you like to be at when it comes to your bodybuilding, your health and fitness, just your overall life? What are some goals that you would like to have achieved?
I will be a pro athlete next year. I'm pretty sure. So it's either going to be this year or next year. So December of 2021, I like to be a pro athlete. I'd like to have a few pro shows under my belt, and potentially like working my way up to Olympia qualifications. So that's where I see myself. I know it's very a big goal and journey. Or hitting the national stage really hard and just being super competitive in the NPC.
No, and that's a great goal, and I love that you said I will, or I can, or I will be a pro because yeah, that's just the right attitude to have. But now the $1 million question, I saved the hardest question for the end. If there was one thing that you could change about the sport of bodybuilding, if someone were to come up to you and say, Savannah, you have the all-knowing power, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, and everyone would go along with it. What would be one thing that you would like to see changed?
I've thought about this before. I wish I could pick my own music when I am on stage.
Wait a minute.
Bikini,
Wait a minute. They don't let you pick your own music.
Bikini is the only division that does not pick their own music. We get house music. So we get like some random Justin Bieber or like whatever radio station DJ mix they give us. Yeah. So I just think it would be nice to pick my own music and that we would get a little bit more stage time. And then sometimes I also wish that we could all be in the same swimsuit. Like, like the suits are really fun and stuff, but sometimes I just want to see like if you took the bling away, if everyone was wearing like all the girls were wearing like a matte black just suit, like would it affect how the judging was? So I think that would be fun if there was like maybe a second portion to like the bikini and maybe like a evening gown one. I don't know. Like those are just fun things that I thought about maybe.
Honestly, I love that you brought that up because I've never put any thought in that ever about like how the different bikinis look. Because now I think about it, yeah, if one bikini is just like super made up and well made up as opposed to the other ones, you can't tell me that it's not just human nature that someone might be more focused on that person as opposed to someone else just based on that. Because that's just human nature, the stuff that's a little bit more intriguing or appealing to the eyes, they go for. But yeah, that's great. So now, if you were given the choice of music, what would probably be one of your go-to songs that you'd like to pose to?
Oh gosh, I don't know what it would be, but it would be something that would it'd have to be like a remix of a few songs. So when I would hit certain poses, it would be like a hair flip and then the music would change. That's what I think would be super fun. So I think it would be like a remix of like old school like hip hop, maybe like a little Beyonce. I don't know, just something like really fun and motivating. I don't know what the song would be, but I'd like to have the opportunity to pick it.
See, now if anyone from the Federation is listening to this right now, that's why you gotta change it right here. I mean, we have creativity to the max right here for and I don't get is there been an explanation that they've given you why they don't let you pick your music?
The only thing I can think is bikini routines are like supposed to be 10 seconds or less for the amateur division. So it would be too hard to have that clipped
Yeah.
down.
That sound guy would have a pretty horrible day. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. So yeah, I guess, but yeah, that's and again, Savannah, everyone, go and give her a link and a follow down below. But lastly, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Oh, I'd like to thank my coach. So I'm a part of Team Elite Physique. So I just want to thank Coach Adam Bonilla. So he's been my coach for this last year. I want to thank my boyfriend and my family for supporting me through my goals during this time because prepping is very hard. It's not easy to diet. It's not easy to say no to alcohol and social events. So I just want to thank those people for supporting me. I want to thank all my followers, subscribers, and anyone that supported me throughout my journey so far. So I love you guys so much. And thank you guys for listening if you are listening here today.
And that I got to give another shout out to the significant others of a lot of these guests that we have on the podcast because they go through a lot. But have you guys ever prepped together?
Oh, no, he does not do my
Okay.
lifestyle.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So that's one of the yeah. So it's about like 75% they have stuff. So now I just got to ask a few more questions then because that opens up a whole thing because
Yeah.
I rarely have people that are not either dating a competitor. So what is his whole opinion on this? Is it just something that well, first of all, I should ask, were you guys together before this? You really got into this journey, or was it something that he noticed you from it?
Yeah, so we've known each other since we were like 16. So we're high school sweethearts. So he's been with me from like my evolution. So he doesn't care what I look like. And so I really appreciate him because he loves me like for me. And he doesn't, he's like, he's always said, I love you for you. It's just kind of like an added bonus that now I'm like in shape. So it's for him, he knows it makes me happy. So it makes him happy.
I mean, yeah, I couldn't have put it better myself. If she's happy, you're going to be happy. And that's, one thing that I think is a general rule of thumb. But yeah, and that's just amazing. And I just had to ask that because, it's rare that we see that. And that's great because it shows, because so many people think that, oh, if I'm not like a bodybuilder, I couldn't, like go out with someone who, focus on that. And it really just shows, no, you don't have to be. I mean, it might help in cases because you understand what they're going through. But yeah, or there's certain days where he knows to kind of, just be a little extra nice and, not really stir the pot as much, he can just tell ahead of time, like, oh, Savannah, love of my life, yeah,
Yeah.
that type of stuff. Yeah, yeah, yep.
Yeah,
So
but it's kind of nice because I always have someone to go out with for a cheat meal because he's not in prep. So whenever I want to go out for a cheat meal, he's always down. But he's also like make sure if I'm like asking for a bite of his food, he's like, "No, you're gonna win." So he'll help me that way too.
lastly, the last question I want to ask for that, because I just thought of it myself, is how hard is that for you to have someone who's not on prep, that's your significant other, when you see them eating all that stuff? Does that play extra mind games, or are you just so focused that you're like, eat whatever you want? I don't care.
At first it was really challenging because I would get mad at him because I wanted his food and like the fact that he was eating it, I somehow like was mad at him for eating it because he didn't like work out and he didn't deserve that food in my mind. But now I like to cook for him, so anytime I can be like, "What can I get you to eat that I want to eat?" I'm like, "Let me get you donuts. Let me get you pizza. I just want to smell it. All I ask is that I take a real big sniff of it and I can smell it. As long as I can smell it, I'm happy."
Yeah, and that's hey, that's great right there, and that's just so amazing that all that was to happen. And again, Savannah, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and talking to us. And everyone, I've said it before, but link to all of her stuff down below. Go and give her a follow. I highly recommend it. Buyer beware though. If you do follow her on Instagram and other places, you will be inspired to get off that couch and stop eating all those Twinkies and get in shape. But lastly, is there anything that you want to say?
No, just thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, absolutely. Well, everyone, once again, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, and we cannot thank Savannah enough. And everyone, have a great day.